Hey everyone.
Hey guys.
What up?
Sorry for the delay out there. We're trying something new. I'm connecting from the studio. So is everything working now? Can everybody hear everybody?
I think everybody should be able to hear each other. We should be able to hear us all on YouTube and Twitch and all that fun stuff. And TikTok, let us know if you can hear us. Is the microphone muted? Oh boy. All right, let me try to. Although it says it's not muted on TikTok.
Is which microphone muted? You guys are hearing me, right?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Well,
it's on TikTok.
And are we live on TikTok?
Yeah, we are live on TikTok.
Can you? I'm not seeing any chats. If you're out there on TikTok, chat to us. Let us know you're there.
This is a remote test, which we will get better at in the future.
Yeah, we're just trying something new, and
it's a test run.
We'll get it probably straight for next week.
Yeah,
people like your shirt, Bob.
But of course,
but it wasn't working there. Okay, let me.
And Steve's image is flipped, Ian.
Is it flipped?
Oh, yeah, I'll flip it back. Actually,
they're still saying they can't hear me on TikTok.
Yeah, let me. I'll fix that.
So they had the theme song for a bit, then it cut out. So
somebody said the sound is muddy for all participants.
Yeah, that's the echo cancellation thing that I had to enable because it's looping back for some reason.
All right, well, we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out for next time. So stand by.
Ian, I want everything to work perfectly.
I know
how complicated it is.
I'm sorry.
So I haven't been here in how many? 2 months?
Mm-hmm. Something like that.
Yeah, we could talk about that a little bit if you want, Steve.
It's up to you. I got stung by a bee today.
Whoa, where? What kind of bee?
In my backyard.
So bees stung your ass.
I was doing some gardening, and I just saw had an instant burning, stinging sensation in my left ankle, followed almost immediately by the same sensation in my right ankle. I got stung twice, one in each ankle. So I stepped on, one of those ground nests, those ground hornet nests.
You don't want to do that.
Like it's just a hole in the ground. There's nothing to see. Like, you know what I mean? And then I got, it took me a while to even find them. I didn't see them. I just, just got stung. But then eventually I found where they were, and there's like a swarm of hornets around this one spot on the ground. So I'm going to have to go out and get some Raid or something.
But you only got bit once or stung once?
Twice. Once on each ankle.
That sucks. That's going to hurt for a while.
It still hurts. It's like 2 hours ago. It still freaking hurts.
Really?
Well, the last time I got stung,
Oh.
I got one of my fingers got stung, and it was like a week of uncomfortable BS. Yeah, so it's
What?
you might be in for it. Yeah, because they're injecting something into you. Something.
It's like acid. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been stung once in my life. Very lucky.
I've been stung several times. These buggers are bad though. These are nasty stings.
I think
Um,
I think I actually saw one of those killer hornets. What are the ones that with the really nasty poker that comes out?
I don't know. They all have nasty pokers. That kind of.
What were the big bad ones that had, like a couple of years ago we were reading about them?
Murder
Oh yeah, those mega hornets.
I think I
Yeah,
saw
but
one of those.
I'm. Are you sure? Because I haven't heard that they were anywhere other than the west coast of the U.S.
Well, then I saw the biggest hornet that we have here.
Well, there's cicada killers, which kind of look like them, but they're pretty big.
Yeah.
But they're not hornets. They're like, I don't know what they are. All right, TikTok. We're back, TikTok.
All right, TikTok. Can you hear me?
Any sound?
We're working on
TikTok, can you hear me?
We are working on it.
Stream ended. Let's just restart.
All right. So anyway,
Yeah.
Steve and I are going to do a YouTube video about something that happened to me since I haven't been here in a couple of months. I had the worst thing that ever happened to me. Roughly 2 months ago. The short of it is I suffer from anxiety and depression, and my doctor who prescribes me psych meds, they're called psychopharmacologists. He prescribed me a very, very strong type of medication called an antipsychotic, which was supposed to help my antidepressant. And long story short, he was raising my dose over the last months, and I had a bad reaction to it at the latest dose increase, which was horrible. It's called akathisia, and he recommended that I go off it cold turkey, and I went off it cold turkey, and I went through 3 weeks of debilitating withdrawal and something called discontinuation syndrome, which basically means that these medications alter your brain chemistry. They literally change the actual brain chemistry that's operating in your head. And when you take the drug away, suddenly, your brain is now operating without that medication, and you're basically dealing with different levels of serotonin and dopamine and all. I'm sure it's blazingly more complicated than I'm even explaining, but bottom line is I've been waiting for my brain chemistry to slowly go back to normal, and it was
Well, Jay's version of normal, anyway.
yeah, my normal. But I mean, it was
normal,
profoundly horrific. I was having unbelievable levels of anxiety and depression. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep for days. I lost like 12 pounds in 2 weeks. It was unbelievable. And
you're not back to baseline, Jay, but you are much better.
I'm much better. I'm not fully back to normal yet. I'm acutely aware of like what's different. But it takes time. Your brain takes time to recover, but your brain does slowly go back to its baseline. But when I was in the worst of it, Bob and Steve, you saw me. I was basically out of my mind for a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
you
were pretty shut down.
Yeah, I was shut down. I was in totally bad shape. I mean, I survived because of my family. The big lesson learned here is there's lots of takeaways that I have from this experience.
The big one is, though, that you should listen to me because I told you not to go cold turkey.
You did. You did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I put way too much trust in my doctor. I didn't research the medications that he was putting me on. I just, let him doctor me. And this one decision that he made and his total lack of care to help me get through what I was going through, because it was basically patient abandonment at that point. Like,
yeah, he mismanaged you is the bottom line.
So first and foremost, I'll tell you a bunch of things I found out. One, I found out that in the United States, if you need mental health care, emergency style, right? Like, okay, I'm having a crisis. I need to get myself in front of a new psychopharmacologist that's going to, help me, get through what I'm going through. And yeah, I would really love to have therapy that can help me deal with the anxiety that I was dealing with. It's been, roughly 60 days, and I still have not been able to find a new therapist that has expertise in anxiety, CBT. That's number one. It took me at least a month to get in front of a new psychopharmacologist, right? So I was literally hung out to dry. I had no help. I could not get help from doctors because they either didn't take my insurance, they wanted to charge me, between $200 and $500 for an office visit, and that's it, or they didn't have room in their practice. So,
Mhm.
And it was
Yeah, we're
really
underserved in mental health.
big time. Yeah, it's a big
Absolutely.
problem. It's a big problem. So it was scary because I didn't really have I was craving information. I just wanted to know what happens to people like me that are going through this. How long is this going to last? What should I expect? Are there any things I can do to help myself? It was really scary on a profound level because I was basically white knuckling it the whole time. And, I'm still suffering. I still don't feel like I'm totally back to myself. Like, it's still painful to deal with because I have a lack of emotions. I don't really feel everything. I don't really feel my feelings that much. Like I'm better now than I was, but I'm pretty far away from being normal. I mean, I'm functioning. The other thing is I was lucky because I had an unbelievable support group. I mean, literally every family member helped me at different times for different things. Like I had to have Bob come and hang out with me a couple of days because, my wife had to go away for work and I couldn't be alone. And Bob had to literally like camp out in my house.
I really didn't want to hang out with Jay.
Steve and Joss were Steve's wife, Jocelyn, is a therapist and Steve's a neurologist, right? So I have these two people that, had extraordinary information to help me and try to help me, find doctors and everything and get information that was useful. I was basically talking to them every day because I just wanted to know what the hell was happening, because I needed to hear from an emotional perspective. I needed to hear from people over and over again that I was going to be okay. Because when you're in it, the anxiety makes you really disbelieve people telling you you're going to be okay, right? It's irrational. So I was battling this anxiety that was basically trying to keep me down, right? It was like anytime somebody would say, Jay, you're going to be fine. You just need to wait it out. My anxiety would take over and say, nope, my brain chemistry is permanently changed and I'll never go back to normal, and it's, you can't just rationally overcome that because it's very lizard brain type stuff that's happening. So, I recommend to people out there that are dealing with mental health issues, that, are dealing with anything, that has to do with getting medications and dealing with therapists, first and foremost, make sure that you really do trust the doctor who's prescribing you these mind-altering medications, because, I put my trust in the wrong doctor and it bit me really bad. Do your research about the medication that you're on. Don't go into it not knowing, like, all right, I'm going to take this medication. How would I get off this medication if for some reason I needed to suddenly get off of it? You need to make sure your support structure is there, and having a good doctor is a huge component to that. The other thing is, like if I had a regular job where I wasn't, working for basically a family-owned business where Steve, had full comprehension of what I was going through, and he realized, I couldn't work for a while. People can lose their job from having something like this happen.
Yeah, but you just take disability at that point, and you're protected by Title 19.
Yeah.
But it would have been some paperwork.
Yeah.
And again, the problem would have been if you didn't have an active relationship with a physician who could document your disability, that would be a problem.
I didn't, because I suddenly didn't have a doctor. And I Google searched this particular doctor, and it turns out that he's basically done this to other people. Very, very, very bad, Google rating on him, with lots of reviews of people describing lots of different scenarios where this guy sucks. And that was disturbing, because I was all in. I was with this guy for 3 years, and he was prescribing me medication. So, bottom line is, even medication that you're prescribed, that's perfectly measured, exactly what dose you're getting. The medication could have been around for a decade or two with lots of information. You still can have a profoundly bad thing happen to you. And you have got to be your own healthcare provider in a way. You've got to be your own advocate.
I would say your own advocate is a better way to put it, not your own healthcare provider.
You're right.
There's no
Steve.
substitute for having a doctor that you trust. That's good. If you don't, you can't be your own doctor. Jay, you have no idea what you're doing.
You're right. You're totally right.
And even if you're trying to you should know what medications you're on. You should know the interactions and like the dosing, and that's definitely very, very helpful. Like what side effects to expect, and you also need to have a good idea of like when to contact your physician, like what is a side effect that's worrisome, and what is one that is just expected and not dangerous, and it's just not an urgent thing, but something you would need to tell them about eventually. But definitely don't kibitz your own care, though. There's a fine line there, and you don't want to cross over that line, because then that becomes counterproductive very, very fast.
It was a huge eye opener, because this person who is treating me, like, literally told me to do the thing that I shouldn't do, which was quit cold turkey, and then provided absolutely no information after that. And I still can't, after turning this over in my head a lot for the last 60 days, it blows my mind that he didn't know the details about the drug that he was prescribing.
Well, you're assuming that. I wouldn't assume that.
But he offered no information. I mean, he had the opportunity to talk to me about it, and he didn't.
Yeah, he was just not very communicative to you. And
there's no difference at that point.
He made a bad decision in terms of risk versus benefit.
There's no difference, Steve. No difference. If he doesn't communicate information that he has,
you're assuming he doesn't know. We can't make that assumption. There's lots of other things that could have gone wrong other than him not actually knowing. Definitely, he was not communicating well.
Okay, so
and definitely that was a bad decision.
It could have been a communication problem. But,
yeah,
but still, the guy who prescribed this to me didn't tell me anything about how to deal with what I was going through. I do think it's likely that he probably wasn't very well versed in the idea of, oh, this guy is going through withdrawal and discontinuation syndrome and all that. He could have easily said, hey, Jay, you might have a really bad experience coming your way when your blood levels go down. He didn't give me any warning. So 3 days later, when my blood level of the medication dropped below a certain threshold, and I got whacked with experiencing the changed brain chemistry, at that point, I was compromised. I couldn't take care of myself. You know what I mean? Like, it was already too late. I needed to be prepared for what I was about to go through. Very, very, very serious, very, very scary, the scariest thing I've ever faced in my life. I mean, I literally would just start crying, because I was so overwhelmed and so mixed up in this thing, and you can't get away from it. It's not like, your leg hurts and it's your leg, and you can almost distance yourself to some degree. Like, I was living inside of crushing anxiety and depression. I was living second to second. And, I have trauma from my experience that I'm going to have to now deal with. And the other thing I found out is that there is another drug that I was prescribed by another doctor, called it's a benzodiazepine. I'm taking Xanax for anxiety. And I found out, and I can't believe I didn't know this, but you're not supposed to take any benzo for more than 2 weeks. It should
that's an oversimplification, Jay. You can't say that.
All right. Well, that's why you're here.
Yeah, you can't say that. So it's just that Yeah, and benzos are very addictive, which you knew because I've told you that multiple times. You may not have remembered, but I told you that. They're just a highly addictive medication. And it's all risk versus benefit. There are certain medical conditions where, you can use them chronically, but it has to be under very controlled conditions and, very carefully monitored, uh, which was in your case, I think you were not really using them properly.
Well, my doctor, like, who was prescribing them to me, like, didn't say
Yeah, that
you
was
should
yet
not be
another
taking these
problem
every
of,
day.
yeah,
Now,
you were not managed properly by the physician who was prescribing them to you.
right. Now,
Yeah.
luckily, I never went to a high dose, which you very easily
Yeah.
can, because benzodiazepines are almost designed to addict you to them, right? They work great.
So they have two features, right? Speaking like technically pharmacologically. So there's one feature that's called tolerance. Tolerance means that the more you take a medication, the less of an effect you get off of it. And therefore, you need to increase the dose in order to get the same effect.
Mhm.
That's because one of the primary reason for that is um, the uh, the receptors that the drug binds to get downregulated. So there's fewer of them. So in order to get the same response, you need more drug. And then the other effect is that they are addictive, meaning that there's separate from the tolerance. There's also something that happens, and it's different for different drugs, although there's some common mechanisms of addiction. Is that either there's pharmacological addiction or physiological addiction and psychological addiction. Psychological addiction comes from any drug that produces a euphoria like effect, just like really good feelings. That's psychologically addictive unto itself, and you chase the feeling that the drug gives you. And then physiological addiction is a neurological phenomenon, like your brain gets addicted to the drug, and that produces a host of behaviors, a drug-seeking behavior, we call it, because that has to do with like dopamine and the reward system. It's like now you are behaviorally addicted to that drug, neurologically addicted. So benzos have all of those. They have tolerance, they have physiological addiction, and psychological addiction. Which is why they need to be used very carefully, very judiciously,
the scary thing
and
is
monitored very, very closely.
they work really well. That's the thing. They
work very, very well.
Really
right.
well.
It's kind of like opiates are the same way. Opiates are another class of drug that has that have tolerance, psychological, and physiological addiction, but they work really well for what they do. And that's part of the problem too. That's part of it's part of the psychological addiction. It's like if you're taking benzos for anxiety and it works, the anxiety goes away. That in and of itself is very addicting, right? You want the anxiety to be gone. You're sort of addicted, if you will, to the beneficial effect of the medication. Yeah. Just like if opiates take your pain away, they make it so that you don't care about the pain. It doesn't bother you. That feeling is something that you are then going to chase. And I deal a lot with patients who are like, I don't understand why you just won't give me as many narcotics as it takes to make me feel better, right? That's basically, I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically where they're coming from, what they're saying. And I get it. I know that they don't understand that. And you have to explain to them, it's like, because this is not sustainable. It's going to take more and more medication to get the same effect. 3 months from now, you're going to be in more pain than you are now. And the only other difference is you're going to be also addicted to narcotics.
Yeah.
And we will have achieved nothing.
And it turns out
that's
that
the problem with these kind of medications.
In the United States, I'm sure this is happening globally, but I'll speak with the information that I do know for sure. In the United States, it has been described to me that there is a benzodiazepine epidemic, meaning that there are tons of people out there who have been loosely prescribed these medications without the doctor really doing their due diligence and telling the patients like how to correctly use them. Like Xanax, as an example, it's very quick acting and short-term acting anti-anxiety medication. You're supposed to take it when you have a panic attack.
The short-acting ones are great for panic attacks. You don't use them that often.
But infrequently, that's the thing. You can't take these every day for sleep. You can't take, and what happens is, like Steve said, these drugs are it's almost like they're designed. I'm not saying that they are, but they work perfectly to make you take more, to make you want to take more. And luckily, I never did. I got to a certain very low level, and I never increased my dose. And you know, when it's my time to come off of the benzos, I'm going to be able to probably do it in a few months.
Months. It takes months, to
Yeah.
slowly decrease. So Jay,
Yeah.
I know there's still a lot more to talk about, but we're also getting a lot of questions off of TikTok. I can't really see the other chat, the stream chat, but and Ian, are we gonna go?
Yeah,
Are we gonna try to test out the?
Let's try to test out the
the
inviting people. Yeah. So sorry,
Okay.
sorry for everybody who didn't understand the TikTok thing, or I was posting in the chat. There is a way to request to become to join the stream. So there should be like a guest request button or invite or something like that. There's like it's a multi button. That's what it is. Live access is needed to go live as a guest. Oh, so you might need to be somebody who can go live to join. But anyway, there's a multi button. If you have the access to join, go ahead and click that, and I'll be able to see you. Otherwise, raise your hand in chat, and maybe I can invite you. I'll see if that works too. And we were testing this because a lot of people on TikTok like to do the debate a scientist thing or ask a question, especially when it comes to contentious issues like climate change or chiropractic, anti-vax, or other science topics that we have discussed previously. But otherwise, if you just have questions and you don't want to join, feel free to post them in the chat. We will play around with that.
While we're doing that, so in the TikTok chat, a lot of people are asking about the UFO hearings. Have you guys seen any of that, Jay and Bob? Or read about it?
Read about what?
Sick of UFOs, man.
The House,
the UFO hearing? Yeah, I read about it.
Yeah, hearings.
Nuts. It's
just nuts. I know. So it is the guy David Grush, who we talked about. I have a TikTok video about him, and he is saying that he has this information, but all the information he's giving is secondhand, and he says he has other information, but he can't discuss it because it's classified. So really, it's like we don't really have any direct information, and the kind of stuff he's saying is this really silly conspiracy stuff. Like to us skeptics who have been following this for decades, it's like really that old narrative BS. It's like Roswell was a cover up, and the Pope was involved at some point. Like Mussolini, like the U.S. got a spaceship from Mussolini, which was brokered by the Pope. I mean, like really, just ridiculous stuff.
Yeah,
like really cartoony.
It's going to waste a lot of time and a lot of money, and in the end, we're going to be right where we are right now. We don't have any physical proof. We don't have anything that.
Jay, your mic just went. Is that just me, or is that?
Can you hear me?
Hello. Your mic is fuzzy. Is that just my audio, or is everyone hearing Jay's mic fuzzy?
Yeah, I'm hearing something. Jay.
Hello. Uh-oh.
Yeah, your mic is messed up, Jay.
It's the drugs, Bob.
Yeah. Do I sound okay? So is it
You
just
sound
Jay's
fine to
mic?
me.
Okay.
It's a little echo cancellation thing. I think I will try to fix it.
Oh yeah, no, it's everybody. All right, so Steve is good, so I'm going to talk. So yeah, but yeah, there's no wrong with anything. And here's the thing you got to know about the House congressional hearing that they're having is that the point of this is for the Republicans to expose the deep state. They don't care about the UFO thing. That's just with the thing that they're exposing today, right? They're just using these guys, using Grush and the other guys to say, see, you can't trust the government, you can't trust the administration. It's all these deep state actors, and that's what it's all about. That's what this is all about. It's just a show hearing so that they can get up there and talk about, how the deep state's hiding everything. The alien angle is really incidental.
Yeah.
To the Republicans who orchestrated this and who are out there saying, "Oh, thank you for your courage for coming forward," and all that BS. It's all nonsense. And again, the stuff that they're saying is just literal conspiracy theory nonsense we've been hearing for so long, in the absence of even the slightest evidence. They just got nothing. And meanwhile, NASA is saying, and the other people who are actually still working for the government are saying, no, there's no evidence of anything alien. The Department of Defense is like, there's just unknowns. There's just weird shit we can't explain.
Yeah.
But no evidence of anything alien.
Yeah, I mean, it's
just that's almost intact, the size of a football field. That's not a subtle claim. You know what I mean? That's like that is conspiracy land. That is crazy town where that guy's coming from.
Yeah, somebody, people in the chat are saying some obvious comments like, it's not like we don't have other stuff that needs to be dealt with, let's ignore global warming and literally chase after fairies.
Well, the Republican House, they first of all, they know they can't get anything actually done because we have a Democratic Senate, right? So for those who aren't that familiar with the American system, like almost all legislatures in the world, it's bicameral. So anything has to get passed both the House and the Senate, which means that they can't enact any of their agenda. So they're just deciding that they're just going to be oppositional, right? They're going to use their time, their 2 years, as being in control of the House, but not the Senate, to just make trouble, just to slow things down, just to throw as many wrenches into the gears of government as they possibly can, and to just showcase for 2024. Right now, it's just all about just throwing out as much nonsense as possible in the run up to the election. But they're not doing anything like actual governing.
Yeah, they're not like creating policy or any of that stuff. It's all just
legislation happening, right?
Yeah, it's complete nonsense.
Legislation happening.
Let me restart Steve real quick. He'll be right back.
As a skeptic, watching something like this unfold in the U.S. government, it's mind blowing. Like, how could we be going back to that? And there it is. There's that proof again that Bigfoot and the Loch Ness monster, like, these things are not going to go away.
Yeah,
they're not. UFOs are always going to be a component to what skeptics have to deal with. And it's sad, because the progress is slow.
It's slow and it's never done. It's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yeah.
Right now it's 2 back, 1 forward.
Yeah, sometimes it's 2 steps back. Absolutely. Any chance of having I govern a city, and can I move there? Yeah, I mean that's an interesting question. In all seriousness, like, to what extent bureaucracy at whatever level, state, federal, local level, going to be automated by AI? This is one of the scenarios that's realistic, that can get scary. In that AI is not, again, the whole notion of an AI apocalypse where like the Colossus or the Cylons or whatever, Skynet, becomes active, becomes sentient and actively homicidal, right? Like, I'm not worried about that scenario.
No.
The scenario is just like anything, we get over dependent on our own technology. That AI is just so convenient and so powerful that we cede more and more things to it, and with less and less transparency, right? Like, that's why there's a lot of talk, like, we always got to keep people in the loop, always got to have people in the loop.
Yep.
And yes, that's correct. I agree with that. That's a good common sense measure, but I also wonder how long we're going to stick to that. At some point, are we going to get complacent and lazy? And and it's just easy. It's like, if you haven't, it's like having a car that can drive itself, but you're supposed to keep your hands on the wheel. But after a while, the car's doing a really good job of driving itself. It's really tempting to, like, take your hands off the wheel because it doesn't seem like it's necessary.
Yeah.
But then, of course, it is, assuming we're at that stage where it is necessary, and then when something emergent happens, your hands aren't on the wheel. So it's the same thing. How much of our increasingly complicated bureaucratic, society are we going to entrust to these AI algorithms, and how long is it going to be before that bites us in the ass in a major way?
Yeah.
Because we don't really understand how they're getting to their decisions, again, we just sort of just take our eye off the ball.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's what makes that kind of scenario plausible is that the AIs work. They're really powerful. Bob, before we came on, you could tell this again. You were just telling us how you used ChatGPT to write code, and you did a week's worth of work in an hour, and better than you would have done it on your own.
It was amazing because I finally had the need to create some nice administrative PowerShell scripts. I haven't done it in years. I forgot a lot, and I realized that I can use ChatGPT at work. They didn't block it, so I'm like, I'm going to do this, and literally, not an hour, Steve. In 10 minutes, 5 minutes, I had a script to do pretty much what I wanted. That would have taken me a week, literally. Yeah. And I never would have implemented it as solidly as ChatGPT did. It was amazing. And now I'm doing little tweaks, and now I'm going to be obsessing over it and really make it nice. And I'm just so excited that I can put out high quality scripts very, very fast. As fast as anybody, as fast as anyone I know at work who was like a guru at PowerShell.
And you were able to check it, like debug it, make sure it actually works?
Absolutely. And the one, I mean, these are not complicated scripts. They're administrative. They're interacting with Active Directory, and they're pulling.
You're not breaking new ground here. You just needed to do something that's well established.
This is basic stuff, but what I was able to pull out so quickly, it just blew me away. I mean, I knew it could happen, but I never really did it at work, and I can't believe how quick and thorough and it's just amazing how much more productive I could be with this type of coding, and I'll be using it a lot here and there as I'll be thinking up reasons why I need to make scripts in PowerShell because of this.
Yeah. Now, did it give you any documentation as to how it was structured or organized, or it's just here's the code, take it or leave it?
No, here's the code, and then it gave me some explanatory information that I would need in order to use it properly. It was very thoughtful, and even though my request was, it was thorough, but it's only a couple of sentences, and it was, it could have been ambiguous, but it knew exactly what I wanted, and amazed, and I didn't even try. It's so happy with that.
That's a space where AI works well because it's a finite language-driven space, right? Another area we have a friend who told us that he uses ChatGPT to write contracts, because again, like there's a ton of contracts out there. The verbiage is pretty standardized, boilerplate, like literally, boilerplate. That's like the perfect application for it. You give it the parameters, but then it just fills those parameters into a boilerplate structure, and there you go. You have a contract for your specific need, and it's like code, right? In a way, legalese is kind of like code. So breaking new ground, like sort of creatively, not so much. That's not what it's good at, but just sort of recreating with it, coloring within the lines. It does really, really good. It does very well. So
it's scary.
I'm using it now mostly for my D&D campaign, to be honest with you. I'm just trying to automate as much as I can, because anyone who has GM'd knows it's potentially a bottomless pit of effort that you could put into it. Anything that you could steal, rob, automate, whatever is great. Because the only thing that really matters is at the end of the day is the experience for the players, and how you got there doesn't matter. And it's all like, it's not like you're selling it, it's all just it's a one-off that's going to happen in your living room or whatever on Roll20. All All right, a couple people are asking me about Mitch McConnell. So I saw that video.
boy.
Actually saw it from multiple different angles. So what they're talking about during a presser with Senate Republicans, Mitch McConnell, who's the Senate Republican leader, in mid-sentence just stopped and just froze and stared at 4 seconds. I mean, it seems like a really long time, but it was a good 20 seconds, I think, that he did it. And then
20.
someone had to like take him by the shoulders and sort of he kind of
him away.
alerted to it
Yeah.
a little bit, and then they just sort of walked him away, and someone else took over for him. So people have been asking me, what do you think happened? So obviously I don't know. I have no behind the scenes information. I have no medical information about that, but I'm just going to say, just generically, just that episode that is publicly available on video, that looked like one of two things. So I'll say this: it looked an awful lot like a neurological episode, right? That wasn't just him freezing or losing his place or whatever. That
And
I would say 90% that was a neurological episode. He had what we call a speech arrest. That's literally what we call that. Because it was mid-sentence, and it wasn't like he was fumbling for the words or going or anything. It was just he was talking, and then like this blank stare. We have a term for that as well. He looked completely blank, and the duration was kind of typical too. So it's one of two things typically is the cause for an episode like that. One is a TIA, transient ischemic attack, which is kind of a mini stroke. Basically, you have a transient, usually lasts for a very short period of time, interruption in blood flow. If it happened in his dominant hemisphere, he would have lost his language, and you can look like you're stunned. Like it's just, he's not processing information. He's not processing language. He can't really think. He's just, neurologically on pause for 20 seconds. So that's one. And then it could reverse itself, although I don't really know how quickly it reversed itself because he was ushered away. Again, I don't have that follow-up information. The other thing is that it could have been a seizure, an absence or a petit mal, or what we would call a complex partial seizure, or a localization-related seizure. The terminology evolves, but basically he had a seizure that was not convulsive, right? So it didn't cause him to shake or flop on the ground or do any of that stuff. It was the kind of seizure where you just lose contact. Like you're not processing information. You lose awareness. So you don't just lose your speech and your ability to think, you actually lose your awareness. And that can happen in somebody who's standing and remains standing, right? He didn't fall to the ground. So a focal seizure is another possibility. And what makes that more likely is that he recently had a fall where he hit his head and had like a minor concussion. So if he had even like a little bleeding or a little scar tissue, whatever, that could be a focus for a seizure.
Mhm.
So having a seizure a couple of weeks after falling and hitting your head is not uncommon. So that's another possibility. I've been looking, I haven't heard any definitive follow-up. So someone said, is it an absence seizure? An absence seizure is something that typically happens in children, and it happens all over the brain at once. That's a generalized non-convulsive seizure. What he had was probably a focal seizure. So in one part of the brain, it could look very similar to an absence seizure, though there's some subtle differences. Again, just given his age and the fact that he had a recent head trauma, it makes a focal seizure much more likely if it were a seizure. I probably would put my nickel down on a TIA just by the way it looked. But anyway, I don't know. It was, but 90% I would say it was one of those two things. Just from the video that's in the public domain.
He did come back and start talking again. Is that common also to be?
Yeah, again, once the episode's over, you could be back to 100%. By definition, with the TIA, the symptoms resolve 100% within 24 hours, but the 24 hours is a completely arbitrary cutoff. Most resolve in 5 to 20 minutes. Right, you have a temporary blockage of your blood flow, and then it resolves, and in 5 minutes later, you're back. You're 100%. That's a typical TIA. So yeah, the fact that he came back later and was at his baseline is not incompatible with either of those scenarios. So I know I was reading one other doctor, like a stroke doctor from Yale, actually, one of my colleagues who was quoted in the press saying he should have been taken immediately to the emergency room. That was the proper response there. Given that kind of episode, again, age, recent head trauma, that's immediately an ER visit. I don't know if that happened. I don't think it did.
Seems like elder abuse to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think anyone there sort of knew like what the proper response was. They were maybe more concerned about the press or whatever. But TIAs are age related in that our vascular risk factors go up as age is a huge risk factor in and of itself, and any kind of stroke-like syndrome is more likely as we get older. Seizures, no, seizures are not age related. There's got to be some cause, and in fact, children are very likely to get seizures for multiple reasons. But
I definitely wish nothing but the best for him. Get back to health. It's you got to put the politics.
Absolutely. Again, I have a lot of political differences with him, but it's interesting that he's one of the few adults I feel like left, even though as much as I completely disagree with what he has done and a lot of his positions, it's not like things would get better, if he were, on the Republican side, if he weren't there. But
yeah,
anyway, it's yet another reason why the topic of discussion in the U.S. politics, like we have a lot of really old politicians running our country, and just again, I don't agree with dismissing politicians just because of their number, just because of their age. I do think that's ageism. I think you have to take each one on their own merits. Like there are fully functional with it, completely, functional 90-year-olds, 90-plus-year-olds, and you get the benefit of their wisdom and experience, So, but then there are people who are in their 60s who are like, yeah, this person's no longer fully functioning. So it's you can't just go by a number. A healthy 80-something, even 90-something-year-old could be fully neurologically functional.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we have to be careful. We have to be careful about the ageism. I totally agree. I mean,
but there is a but people slow down when they get
legitimate concerns there.
Age, like our mother's 86. She is not the woman she was when she was 76 or 66. Absolutely not. Our father he passed away when he was 86. In his 80s, he was absolutely not the guy that he was in his 60s and 70s. I'm sure a lot of people have that experience. With
still
elderly family members.
Along those lines, I don't know if you guys saw this article. It was actually from 6 years ago, but it was a pharmacist said he filled Alzheimer's prescriptions for members of Congress. I mean, how does that factor into the whole?
That's unreal.
That's from 2017.
That's a violation of
it's a violation of HIPAA.
HIPAA,
certainly.
yeah. So screw that guy. But
but also it's
I mean, so first of all, 6 years ago, the only Alzheimer's drugs that were available really weren't for Alzheimer's; they were for memory. They were used to treat people with Alzheimer's, but they were symptomatic, and you could even use them if people have traumatic brain injury, So that's a separate question. So one question is just, as people get older and they slow down, at some point, do they really age out of being, competent to be a member of Congress? The other question is, what if they have pathology, right? What if they have severe depression, like Fetterman? Like Fetterman had a stroke and has post-stroke depression, and that impaired his ability to carry out his duties. That wasn't an age issue. That was a issue of pathology. What if somebody, Ronald Reagan had Alzheimer's disease in his second term? At some point, and they knew it, and we know now that they absolutely knew it, and because just by the way things played out, and they were covering for him, you know. So it doesn't surprise me that people in their 70s or 80s who are reasonably functional but maybe not on their game, maybe want to get a little boost by taking Aricept or Namenda, or like taking one of the drugs that might boost your cognitive function a little bit. Does that make them not competent to be in the government? What if it works? What if they're taking Adderall for ADHD? How many politicians do you think are taking stimulants? That's a good question. Does that render them not appropriate to hold, not competent to hold office? I bet you that's a lot of them. You know what I mean? What we certainly can't require that our politicians are not taking any medications at all, right?
Yeah.
That's not a reasonable.
Of course not.
Reasonable standard. What if they have epilepsy and they take anti-seizure medication? Is that?
But Steve, it's kind of like the porn thing. Like, but when you see it, you just kind of know.
Well, what I think we should have is transparency.
Yeah.
And I think that right now it's kind of voluntary. You can't lie. If you lie on any kind of official document or anything, that's a problem. But or the other thing is, like with Trump, he had his private physician make just ridiculous statements about his health, and like that's sufficed for his.
Do you remember that? That was.
I do think that it would be reasonable to institute legislation saying that, if to be on the ballot to be president of the United States, you need an independent medical and psychological, like neurological evaluation, and that those results are made public. That's the price you pay for applying for the job of president, is absolute transparency. And then we could have the discussion about whether or not the same should be true for senators and congressmen, or should be true for appointees to the Supreme Court. I think in the name of transparency, it's I think that's perfectly reasonable. If you want a job with that much power, the price is you don't get to keep your healthcare information secret, and you can't just hire some quack to say what you want them to say. It has to be an approved independent examination. Insurance companies make you do that before you get insurance, right? I mean, the voters should freaking have the ability to do that before we make somebody the leader of the free world or give them a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
But the downside to that, I will say, that's not a perfect solution, because of certain, I think biases and prejudices. Like, for example, if somebody had been treated for depression at some point, or let's say they're just having mild depression and they're taking an antidepressant, and it really has no impact on their ability to function, or they have really well-controlled anxiety, but they need to be on a medication, but they're fully functional, that could be prejudicial. That information probably will not help a lot of voters make a better decision. They'll probably make a worse decision because they'll be acting out of ignorance and prejudice, not like taking it into really good account. So that's the trade-off, and but we may just have to decide that trade-off is worth it, and you know what I mean? Or perhaps like in medicine, like a hospital could require somebody applying for hospital privileges, and they often do, to disclose any health information that might impact their job. So we are giving up our right to privacy of our own health information. You have to say, have you ever been addicted to a drug? Do you have anything that affects your motor control? Like if you're going to be a surgeon, have you ever used, stimulants or whatever? You have to disclose this information. You can't lie about it. That's fraud, because you're entrusted, right? As a healthcare provider, you are entrusted with responsibility, and therefore you have to surrender some of that right to privacy about your own medical condition, but
Yep.
that information doesn't necessarily get made public. It goes to a committee of experts who evaluate it.
Is that what's happening now, Steve?
Oh yeah, that happens now. Absolutely.
Somehow I just don't feel
you
like
renew your license at the state, you have to check a bunch of boxes which say that you've never been addicted to drugs. That is information you have to disclose. So I think at least there may need to be the same thing. Like, even if it's not made public, it should still be independently reviewed.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? And then the decision could be made. This is something the public needs to know. This is not something the public needs to know. It's not relevant to their job or to their ability to carry out their duties. But this is, and therefore it needs to be disclosed. So that'd be kind of like an intermediary approach. But right, doesn't that makes sense? And again, a lot of this was kind of standard, but it was more of a tradition, not a law. And of course, Trump broke all the traditions. Now it's like, oh shit, we need to make it a law now.
Yeah,
They're
right.
like turning over your tax returns. It's like the same thing.
Jesus Christ.
We have to now codify into law things that were just good practice before, because all those norms were destroyed.
Yeah, well, we got to do it.
Not doing it. It's not happening though.
Yeah, we
I know.
It's got to happen though.
Why isn't that happening?
Well, because now the Republicans own the House, so it's never going to happen. Well, that's the case. Because we had, we were tied. We had a one vote, whatever. We had the tie-breaking vote in the Senate, and 2 senators who were on the fence. So we didn't have a 60 vote
Majority
filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. So
kind of in line with what you guys are saying, like talking about. Maybe this is a little off track, but I have not been reading the news for the last 60 days.
Mm-hmm.
I was advised to just stop doing it.
Take a break.
Yeah. And I've been not looking at my phone after 7 p.m. or as best as I possibly can. Absolutely, I do not touch it when I'm in bed anymore. And I do think that there is something to be said about it because, our minds and our sense of well-being is affected by the information that we read, that we take in from social media and from the news. And I'm not saying, totally tune out and don't know what's going on in the world, but there is something to be said for tamping that down a lot. Don't consume the negativity nonstop. It's been proven that social media in general is a negative, the aggregate of being on social media is negative for those people who are on it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, but I think it depends on how you're using it. Like if you're using it as your news aggregator, it could be really efficient. It could be really a great way to get your news. And but yeah, if you're using it to just check in on how everyone else is doing and are they doing better than you and obsessing over things like that, yeah, there's or what are people saying about me? Like there's definitely a lot of negative, like psychologically negative feedback loops you can get into on social media. And again, like everything, it's like everything in moderation. Like I basically use it for my news,
But it's hard though, because your phone, like what I've realized is my phone has trained me to have an intolerance to being bored.
Yeah.
If I'm bored, I take out my phone instantly to entertain myself. And that's really bad because we're not, I hate to like say things like we didn't evolve to do this and didn't evolve to do that. That's a whole other complicated conversation, but getting a dopamine hit all the time as if you're playing a video game all the time, that's unhealthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You should be able to sit down and do nothing and be perfectly fine with that. But we don't. We have a knee jerk to go to our devices and to be on screens and to consume information and I'm finding that the longer I'm away from my phone, like I feel better. I do believe that my phone has had a negative impact on me.
Yeah.
And I want that to be like one of the things that I base my new, I'm trying to.
Yeah, you got to get to a sustainable moderation plays. Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say as a general advice, don't consume any news.
No, of course not.
We live
No,
in a democracy. We have to know what the hell is going on.
I mean, I did that
And-
because I was in a
Yeah,
crisis.
I know you were
but-
taking a break because you had personal reasons to do that. That's fine, but yeah,
But
there's
Steve, I
gotta
got
be
to
a
tell you
balance
though, I
in-
got to tell you, it was really nice not reading about
I hear you.
freaking mass murders every day. It was,
Well, it's also how you consume your news. Like you train yourself to sort of skip. Don't click the clickbait. You know what I mean? Like I really go to good sources of quality news. I don't go in for clickbait. And when I do read an article, it's like something that I think is important to me, or I'm interested in, or it's science news or whatever. You know what I mean? But yeah, don't go for the sensational, the outrage machine. All that stuff. It's
well, it's
but I
also
know it's
easy.
hard-
Like
it's
you could
easier
read
said
it,
than done. But
you could read a news item, and then you're like, oh, I'm intrigued about this. So then you read like 5 more news items on the same thing, and a lot of it is like with me, I was obsessed with the politics and the negativity in the politics and everything, and not having that be in my brain for the last couple of months is nice. It's good.
Yeah, I hear you. But here's an example. Like I've been following the Ukraine war very closely since it started, and I intend to continue to do that because I'm very interested in how it's going, and what and also I'm very interested in what politicians are saying about what they would do about it. Like when someone running for president says we should stop funding the war in Ukraine, I want to know about that.
I agree.
You know what
I
mean?
agree.
So, but anyway, but you think carefully about what how you are spending your online time.
Yeah.
Also, definitely how much you're spending, and
you shouldn't have devices in your face before you go to bed. Like you need a couple of hours.
Make sure that you put the electronic devices down. At times, you do analog stuff. You get outside. It's very, very important. And I would say make sure that you're using your online time well. Now, that could be that this is like a really good diversion, really good entertainment. If you feel like this is sort of a positive thing for your mental health, that's good too. Like I play video games to relax and to turn off
I'm
away
fine
from
with that too.
everything for a while. That's good. But man, I got to keep up with the politics, man. I got to know what's going on. And I know, but Jay, you depend to some extent on the people in your social circle keeping you up to date because
I did. No, I would tell
chat,
Steve, tell me what happened, what's going on. Give me a quick 1-2 on what's going on. But I went through a mental health event. I went through something that made me have to make some big changes, and I did. And I'm just noticing the benefit from it. Like I like the fact that I'm not on my phone in bed anymore. I'm reading books again. Like it's easy for your phone to take away books. Like it's just healthier to read books than it is to doom scroll at 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night. Guys, I got to go because I have 2 children that are waiting for me to take them to the movies. They need their dad.
Yeah, and actually, we have a guest who's also a science communicator on TikTok, and I got that to work. So
okay,
good. Who was this? The Rad guy?
Yeah, it's Rad.
Everybody have a wonderful night, day,
MHP.
wherever you are. Don't worry about me. I'm going to be fine. I'm on the right track, and I got the right support, so I'm going to be good. But think about what I told you. Be careful with your medication. Question your doctor.
Hearts for Jay in the chat.
Yeah,
there you go. Put that.
Thank you for all the support too, guys. I really appreciate it. And
all right, Jay.
That's all I got to say about that.
See you tomorrow.
Good night.
Jay's taking him to Barbieheimer.
Bye.
All right, bye, Jay.
All right, so we're gonna bring somebody out from TikTok?
Yeah, let's bring Rad. Hopefully this works, Rad. We're still testing all the audio.
Yeah, you're our first test case, so be patient.
You literally are the first one. So hopefully, the Rad guy is there. Should be joining, and hopefully
hello,
we can
you hear me?
I can hear you. How you doing?
Chat, let us know if you can hear him.
I am so excited to be on with you.
Oh, thanks for coming on. So yeah, you are a science creator for TikTok as well.
Yeah, I actually talk about radiation and nuclear power. Is kind of.
And he has a cool mustache.
What's your bottom line on nuclear power? What do you think about it?
Oh, I think it is safe and important to use in addressing climate change.
Good answer.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
We like
probably
that.
know.
More important question: what are your thoughts on nuclear rockets?
Oh, I'm all for nuclear rockets. I think people misunderstand them a little bit, but
Yeah.
I've interviewed people about nuclear rockets before.
What about thorium reactors? Where do you stand on that?
Yeah. So I think, I think there's a lot of hype around it. I think people think that, oh, thorium, it's different than uranium. We could just go thorium and we don't have to worry about all the uranium, the things that come with uranium, but they don't realize like they're all the same actually.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all safe, honestly.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people say like, oh, thorium, there's no way, or you don't have to deal with long-term waste. They're inherently safe and because they're molten salts. But you can have all those things with uranium too. So I think thorium's just fine as another option.
Yeah, it's just another option. I think one of the best
Exactly.
things about it is that there's a lot of thorium in the U.S. and we kind of haven't really been managing our uranium supplies very well, from what I understand. So there's just a lot of it. So whatever we could. But I also have read. Tell me if this is true. A couple of years ago, if we reprocessed existing spent nuclear fuel, we could basically run our country for a century just off of that without mining any further uranium. Is that square with what you know?
Spot on.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. It's about a century. If we, and that would be all of our energy, or all of our
all of our
needs,
current energy use. Yeah, not just our current nuclear use. That's 5 times basically our current nuclear output. Energy output for a century. That'll give us more than enough time to develop whatever other futuristic technology we need. I mean, we'll have off the hook wind and solar at that point, and grid storage and everything. Without mining 1 gram of additional uranium.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it all comes down to expense. I know that's like at the end of the day. When I get into discussions with the nuclear skeptics, which I get it, but I could deal with every issue. There's a pretty good science-based answer to it. The waste is not an issue, all that stuff. Then it comes down to, but it's expensive. It's like, yeah, that's true. It is expensive. That's like the one thing that, and we could talk about like, we could fix that to some extent with streamlining regulations. We can, the small nuclear reactors are going to be cheaper to build and blah, blah, blah. But we still haven't done it, until we actually, build a cheaper reactor. We're still sort of betting on the possibility of cheaper nuclear. Right. I don't know if you agree with that assessment as well, or you have anything else to add to that.
I think that also we're betting on cheaper other things showing up. So if nuclear is not there, we need a crap ton of batteries and long-term storage and things that don't exist right now when it comes to grid scale options, or the things that do exist are much more expensive than nuclear. So it's
I agree. And
yeah,
absolutely. And also, it's if you actually counted the externalized cost of fossil fuel, nuclear becomes much more favorable, compared to that.
It's funny. I just finished a conversation with, I don't know if you know who John Hart is, or Ken Caldera, climate scientists.
I've heard the names. Yeah.
I just actually finished a whole entire 90-minute long what do they call it? A living room conversation with them, and those things definitely came up.
I mean, so the final thing for me is always like, it may be true. I mean, you may be able to have a totally renewable and pumped hydro infrastructure in 40 years, but what if it doesn't work out? We need to hedge our bets, and we can't go back in time 20 years and build out or maintain our nuclear infrastructure. For me, it's at the very least we need to hedge our bets by maintaining as much nuclear as we can, because for the foreseeable future, it's nuclear versus coal. That's what it comes down to, and there's no contest if the question is nuclear versus coal. Until that's no longer the real choice, I think we're going to need it.
I think it's important you said hedge your bets. Like that
Mhm.
was one of the things that I brought up during my conversation. And I brought up kind of there's sort of the analogy with it being sort of like COVID, right? Like
Yeah.
we're investing in this long-term thing that's kind of like investing in a vaccine, right? And we didn't just go with one company and said you're going to be the one that's going to build. You're going to be the answer.
Mhm.
We went with multiple options, and we got multiple.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah.
All right.
Well-
So you're in favor of nuclear power. Awesome. You're in favor of nuclear rockets. Even more awesome. What else do you talk about? So do you get it? Do you end up talking at the other end, like um, contradicting misinformation about like 5G and that kind of radiation, or do you not get into that?
I've done 5G a little bit. I have talked about that. It's just like not much to say.
Yeah,
Like
it's
like
non-ionizing radiation. Don't worry about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I've explained that a lot. I think a lot of the questions and the skepticism that I get is usually really focused on the nuclear power, radiation,
Mhm.
the Fukushima water release. Like that's
Yeah.
another one that I get a lot. Not too much on 5G and stuff, but I have addressed it before. Yeah.
Yeah, my understanding of the Fukushima thing is that the concentration is going to be negligible. Like if it's always good to compare it to background radiation, right?
Yeah, like bananas.
This many chest X-rays, or whatever. But yeah, so
Yeah.
this many bananas. But like the Fukushima radiation, in terms of like diluted in the ocean, is going to be negligible, right?
Yes, and specifically the isotope of concern is tritium.
Mhm.
And I did a video on this actually a while back, and I put it out again, and it got a lot of views on how a lot of people like to use bananas. I like to use Brazil nuts as my comparison because
Wow.
I feel like it's a little more defensible when it comes to the amount of dose you get from it. But
Mhm.
Brazil nuts have radium in it,
Oh yeah.
which is yep. And your body will take that and it'll deposit it in your bones. And in order to get the same amount of dose that you would get from a single Brazil nut, you'd have to drink 3.5 gallons of the water that they're releasing from Fukushima in order to get that same dose.
Yeah.
And nobody is drinking that water.
Right.
But yeah.
Right. That's
And
a
that's
great
the water
comparison.
that's going to be further diluted by the ocean.
Yep. What's that?
And that water that you're referring to is the water that's going to be dumped into the ocean and diluted even more? Or are you talking about
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Wow.
And thankfully, the isotope of concern is tritium, and tritium does not bioaccumulate at all.
Yeah.
So
it also has a short half-life, doesn't it?
It's 12-year half-life, but it has a 10-day biological half-life in humans.
Yeah. Okay.
So
we need to concentrate that tritium for our fusion reactors. Do you talk about fusion at all? That's something you get into? Fusion?
Sorry, say again?
Do you talk about fusion power at all?
I do a little bit. I think fusion is interesting. I think fusion kind of shows a lot of people don't. I feel like they want anything but uranium power.
Yeah.
So that's why people accept, thorium, and then now they're like, oh no, let's go fusion. Look, all these breakthroughs, and we are quite a ways off.
I agree.
From fusion, and I actually work in fusion right now.
Oh yeah,
so
cool. Well,
yeah,
tokamak or inertial confinement. What are you working on?
Neither one actually, and I am not actually
gravitational.
I'm working parallel. I'm not actually like doing the design or anything. I do radiation protection for fusion company. But they're using not either. They're using basically taking a tritium gas and bombarding it with a deuterium ion beam, basically, to produce the fusion. So it's not for energy.
Not for energy. Okay.
Yep. It's for the neutrons. It's actually for producing radioisotopes. for medical use.
For medical use. Okay, interesting. Yeah, because and that solves the whole we need net positive energy thing, right? If you're not using it to make energy.
Exactly. Yep.
And then so you're involved in the radiation shielding?
Part of it, yep. So radiation shielding, making sure that whenever they're running the system, that the radiation levels are safe, because there are radiation levels that come from fusion. So I think people think there isn't, but there absolutely is.
There absolutely is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there would still be radioactive quote unquote waste, but because of the shielding that gets bombarded with radiation, like neutrons and stuff, what I understand.
Yeah. Typically, it's activation products that when it comes to the waste.
Right. And they're using like beryllium. I read is one of the materials that they're looking at for the fusion generator, because beryllium, I guess, has a really, really high melting point. But it's very toxic, so you can't touch it. But
it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
But anyway, yeah. So that's. But Bob and I have a slightly different view on this. But I think, like fusion power, before it's like generating net electricity and hooked up to the grid, and we're like powering our cities on fusion reactors, it's going to be at least 50 years. I would think, based on where we are right now.
I would tend to agree.
Yeah, we'll probably have fusion rockets before we have fusion reactors.
Yeah.
Fusion rockets.
Yeah, fusion rockets are easier than fusion reactors.
Who cares if it's efficient? You just want to get from point A to point B.
Right.
It's pretty frustrating. I mean, even the advance from last year with inertial confinement was nice and all, but they're not gonna make a commercial reactor. That research that they did was just to learn about what happens during fusion, so that we could better take care of our nuclear stockpile. Their goal isn't to make these fusion reactors, and I think it would be very difficult to expand on their process now with the
it's not a sustainable process.
They'd have to throw those hall rooms in there like many per minute, over and over and over. I mean, it's just not the way it's going to happen. It'll probably be a tokamak or one of the other designs that are coming out rather than inertial confinement.
I'd agree.
The one that we talked, the most recent one we talked about was when they had the cavitation, right?
That was fascinating.
Yeah, they're not trying to sustain fusion. They're just trying to get a moment of fusion by using the cavitation method, and they can just do it over and over again, like the putts of a motor. But yeah, we'll see. I don't know if that may be easier than trying to have self-sustaining fusion, which seems to be the real difficult thing at this point.
Absolutely.
So you never know.
We've known about fusion for forever, not forever, but for a long time, and it's been very difficult to. We've never had the Chicago Pile 1. We've never had that moment.
Yeah.
Yet we've known about fusion for almost as long as we've known about fission.
Yeah, it's really tough.
Yeah, but once we get it, it'll be nice. I mean, if we get a room temperature and ambient pressure superconductor, then it'll be a lot easier to for fusion.
Yeah, that's one of our news items this week. All the buzz about the alleged room temperature, normal pressure superconductor. We were a bit skeptical of it, but it's
see.
Possible. I mean, it's not like it's 100% not true, but it's too early to pop the corks.
Yeah, a lot of scientists were not swayed by the evidence in the papers, but we'll see what the other labs. If the other labs can produce it and then test it, then that's great. And then also, if we get some solid peer review, obviously that will be, very beneficial, to determine, how viable this is. But my fingers are crossed.
Yes, I love how you're doing the right thing, right? You're waiting for people to look into it to see, is this actually true?
Does it replicate? And, that's the one good thing about this, is that we'll probably within a few weeks we'll probably know if labs can replicate it or not.
It's very easy
to collapse very quickly, or be like, oh, something's going on here.
I read today it takes 4 days.
Is that going to be in the news? are they going to report on that? Whether
Yeah.
if it turns out it's not real, is that going to
yeah,
get
they're
clicks?
gonna.
Oh yeah, they'll be reporting it. They'll be reporting it for sure. If anything, it'll bring media attention to their labs.
Yeah. Well, the media
All right, well,
has
it looks-
learned, and I've seen this behind the scenes. The media has learned that if something sensational news comes out, they can gullibly report, like breathlessly report the sensationalized news, knowing that there's a good chance it's bullshit. And then when it gets debunked, they report on the debunking as if they were part of it, as if they're like exposing that it was nonsense. Meanwhile, they were promoting it in the first place. So they get you coming and going. So so if when the story collapses, they're happy to report upon that too. It's all clicks. To them, it's all clicks either way.
Yeah, the clickbait science news I'm seeing now, it's just getting worse. It's getting worse. Anything to get that damn click, regardless of whatever title they need to come up with. It's pissing me off. It's gotten worse than it was, I think.
Oh yeah, and I've been definitely. If you watch some of my videos, I talk about some of the situations at like Zaporizhia and Chernobyl in Ukraine in the last year, and I've had to deal, or I don't know if you call it debunking videos, but response videos.
Yeah,
to
response
those
videos.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are over time. So this is a successful experiment. Thanks for being our first guest.
Yeah,
on
thanks
our
a lot, Rad.
TikTok live streaming. Yep.
I'm very honored.
Yeah,
Thanks,
that was
man.
great.
Pretty
Good talking with
rad.
you. Yeah, totally rad. And thanks for making this work, Ian. I know you were scrambling the whole time.
I know. Sorry.
That just happened, but you always make it.
Save, Ian.
Just barely. We'll get better for next week.
Yeah.
And
all learning experience.
I know. And one thing I didn't realize was that people to join, you have to have the ability to go live on TikTok. So obviously that's like an obvious.
Okay.
It should have been an obvious thing, which Rad has because he's a big deal.
He's a TikToker. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
So yeah. So we'll see.
Thank you so much.
All right. Good talking with you.
Have a good one.
Thank
next
you.
week. All right, I'm going to end it on TikTok. I'm going to kick Rad.
All right. Goodbye, TikTok. Thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye, TikTok. Bye-bye. There we go. And multi-guest. And yeah, if you have or people who have live access and they want to ask Steve some stuff or any of the skeptical rogues some stuff next week, join us. All right, we'll see you later, TikTok.
Yeah. We'll keep trying.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, Ian. Thanks,
no
Bob.
problem.
Have a good week, everybody.
See you guys later. And let me hit the video thing now. I have to find for this one. All right, bye.
Skeptic's Guide to the Universe is produced by SGU Productions, dedicated to promoting science and critical thinking. For more information, visit us at theskepticsguide.org. Send your questions to info@theskepticsguide.org. And if you would like to support the show and all the work that we do, go to patreon.com/skepticsguide and consider becoming a patron and becoming part of the SGU community. Our listeners and supporters are what make SGU possible.
Okay, maybe a little bit of secret stuff. Okay, it kind of worked on TikTok. Okay, everybody. So like join us next time. And then we'll do some more stuff on TikTok. And enjoy. You gotta have live functionality for that to work. And I'll fix the nobody's left to sneak. You're here. Everybody's sneaking. Hey, hi. That's it. So do the thing, hit the like, follow, tell your grandmother. Go do Patreon, buy a shirt or something. It's not all just promo. I'm actually here to say hello. Hi. Come to Nauticon. That's not a promo. I'm just like, you can see me there. Well, you won't. I'll be hidden. So you'll have to find me. and then other things. And Evan might pop up. Yeah, and it wouldn't be funny if Evan showed up at the end. That's it. Yeah. So there you go. That worked out well. And if you know any fixing the tech, I know it's just like all kinds of stuff, but that's fine. It's part of the fun. The TikTok guy was great, right? So that was Rad from the Rad. I wanted to ask him why he glows. Was he involved in a Demon Core incident? The Rad guy glows on TikTok. Check him out. He's pretty cool. He's got some good videos. I was actually just looking at him while we were talking. And that's it. All right. Bye-bye, platonically. Thank you very much. See AI Evan next time. We'll try to do that. More things for me to do. All right. See you guys later. Bye-bye.